This is, I'll call the meeting to order in somewhat of an informal fashion. This is April 14th, and we are in preparation for our meeting of April 18th, next Tuesday. And I am pleased to say that we have a presentation today that I'm really pretty excited about seeing. And that is Mr. Will McAbee from Enterprise Fleet Management is going to give us a presentation with potential recommendations for the city on fleet management. So,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. McAbee.
Well, Mayor Spruill, thank you so much for having me. And again, nice to see you, as we've met a few times to just have some preliminary conversations. And as far as where we are with this process, just to set this foundation a little bit, I came in to Enterprise about 9 years ago, straight out of college. Thought it was going to be a quick little stepping stone onto something bigger and better than renting cars, but here I am, just had my 9-year anniversary. In the last 3.5, 4 years, I've been doing this side of the business. So I've managed my own rental branches for up to about 1,600 vehicles or so. So I understand the problems from acquisition to maintenance to downtime, all of those things that you guys have to deal with for your individual departments day in and day out, and the city vehicles as a whole. So with that, when I came into fleet, there wasn't a whole bunch of government business in our territory down here in the southeast. So we're headquartered out of Birmingham, Alabama, but we cover the state of Alabama, the state of Mississippi, and the Florida Panhandle. So with that, there's a huge opportunity across the nation. We've been doing this for decades with other organizations, and the same principles play true for what we do for our rental side of our fleet and all of the infrastructure that we've developed surrounding the Enterprise Rent-A-Car brand, which most of you are probably more familiar with. And we basically come and take a look at what is the organization's operational goals, what is the financial goals, what kind of budget are we working with year in, year out. And we marry that up with our systems and our processes to plug you directly in to that existing infrastructure, to that knowledge, that industry expertise of operating one of the largest fleets in the world. So it takes a lot of administrative burden off of you and your team in trying to figure out why are we doing this or how are we doing this, what's the rhyme and the reason behind doing any of this. And it offloads that burden to the Enterprise team, and we're charged year over year much more than any fleet vendor you've ever dealt with or vehicle vendor you've dealt with. We're not a let me know what you need and we'll holler at me next time. We're going to be in the pocket with you, and you'll have a dedicated account team that is charged with helping you with anything from day-to-day questions on the fleet to strategic planning and ongoing financial analysis, because the industry changes. As we've seen, especially over the last 2 to 3 years, one of the biggest opportunities, one of the reasons why I'm here is, vehicle prices have gone up about 40% for what government organizations are used to paying anyways. With COVID hit, vehicle availability and inventory, just the bottom fell out of it. And the problem with some of the inherent strategies surrounding the way that you typically manage the fleet is that you and every single other government organization are vying for the same government bid list vehicles from the same dealers that have it. We have those same relationships, so we can help you acquire those and also give you a little more insight into the vehicle ramifications on the financial side. So not just what are we paying on the front end, but what are we paying in maintenance costs? What are we paying in fuel? What are we paying in actual total depreciation when we factor in resale, which is one of the biggest pieces. Resale is the secret sauce to this whole thing, is that allows us to recoup a portion of the vehicle, and ideally about 40 to 50% of that vehicle cost to offset the cost of that replacement vehicle. And if done correctly, we're able to actually continue to drive down those expenses year over year as we reduce the financed amount that we have. One of the nicks in the armor that I've seen from some of the government strategy in the past is that individual departments come to the Board of Aldermen every year and they ask for money for the vehicles that they need. Traditionally, and I know, I've learned through this process, it's a little bit different from just paying cash like some of the other organizations with you particularly. But a lot of them pay cash for a vehicle, they ask that money for the board, they go get their vehicle, and then when they resell that vehicle, the money came from the general fund or wherever it came from, that's where that money goes back to once that asset's sold. With that strategy, there's no incentive for any of the department heads to get rid of that vehicle before they feel like they've gotten all of the life out of it, because it's not coming back to that department, so to speak. And with this program, it's not necessarily coming back to the department, but it's coming back to the replacement vehicle. So instead of forfeiting that money back away and having to go ask the Board of Aldermen for the entire cost of a brand new vehicle and however many that is, you're able to capture that resale value, place it directly into, if you want to call it a down payment, on the new vehicle, and so you're reducing that financed amount year over year. And as we cycle through the fleet, that monthly payment and what that financed amount is continues to reduce from a cash flow standpoint. Any questions so far? Good?
I think so.
Okay.
Go ahead and
Awesome.
roll into it.
Yeah, I'll roll right into it. So again, this is a little bit of a refresh for you, Mayor. I use the same format of what we talked about before, just so we cover all of the bases. But I want to go through and immediately review the fleet analysis and what that looks like. This is just a proof of concept at this point in time. There's still some tightening up that we can do from this, but given the information that we've discussed and that I've gathered, we feel pretty confident that this is going to be a good representation of what the potential of this program could be. After that, I'll roll through kind of how that works with acquisition, funding, resale, maintenance, fuel, and it's not a one-size-fits-all approach by any means. Again, that's where the operational conversations of what you're trying to achieve, what's working today. I don't want to come in and completely mess up anything that's working satisfactory for you right now. So we'll run through that and then talk through what the due diligence process looks like, and from a timeline standpoint, what's a realistic time frame that we might be able to implement something like this. So the first thing that I did is I took the fleet data, asked for a fleet list. So your make, model, VIN number, and current odometer on the fleet. So if we look at this as a whole, it breaks down vehicle types. I actually had to whittle this down. You had 27 different types of vehicles that you operate, whether that's a two-wheel drive regular cab pickup truck, a four-wheel drive regular cab pickup truck, an extended cab, so on and so forth. And I see that all the time with government organizations, because when a department comes and they need a vehicle, they're relying on what that state bid dealer or what the state bid list says that they can get. So let's say for like maybe a meter reader for the water department, if they really could use maybe a Ford Ranger or a small pickup truck, but an F-150 is the only thing on the fleet list that year, well, they're getting an F-150. So while it's the right vehicle for the job that year, it may not be actually the right vehicle for the job in total. So this program obviously allows you to have the same access to government state bid pricing that you're already privy to, but we also can expand your options past that to any maker model vehicle that's out there that offers a government level incentive for you. So with that acquisition strategy, we can marry that up with our depreciation strategy to make sure that we whittle this down. So what I did was I took your individual vehicle types and the number of vehicles within each type, and it tells me the average age and then the average mileage. So from a really high level, and this is more or less a 30,000 foot view of the fleet today, if you were just to take a look from the outside in, we're operating 136 vehicles as a whole. On average, you would walk out to any vehicle and it would be about 8.9 years old on average, with about 90,000 miles to 100,000 miles on it. So you're going about 9,000 miles a year. It's just fleet wide across the whole thing. The biggest thing for me is obviously safety is number one, and cost as well. So the thing that just kind of jumps out is, based off the number of vehicles that we've been purchasing over the last 5 years, is kind of what I've whittled down to see what our most recent strategy around the fleet is. We have about 56 vehicles that are over 10 years old. So those are definitely the ones that are causing our maintenance costs to be higher than it should be. Vehicle downtime is not where we probably want it to be. And then obviously compromise reliability, safety, image, things of that nature that can matter, especially to the law enforcement community from a recruitment and a retention standpoint. That's been huge. It's helping get those down. So again, I outlined the fleet strategy, buying from the state bid list. I know you don't pay cash particularly right now, but a lot of my government organizations do run until failure. And then from the department standpoint, a lot of the decisions surrounding the fleet are made individually within those departments instead of having kind of a fleet plan across the city as a whole. So that's one of the biggest things, just conceptually, and the reason why you have a vehicle vendor in front of you today is to talk more so, not about just buying and selling vehicles, but what are the operational implications of this, and how can we help you make better decisions surrounding the fleet from a financial capacity? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're charged with, is spending taxpayers' dollars to the best of our ability. This is going to provide much more data, and not only the data that it gives you, but it's giving you a mechanism from an industry expert to understand that data, break it down in a way that can be presented to you year over year and give you that information. At the end of the day, we are just another arm of the city. Should you choose to go this direction, we want to be viewed as an employee, like from your seat. So you very much still make the decisions surrounding the fleet. We give you the recommendations and that information to make those decisions to the best of your ability. Make sense? So this fleet schedule, and as we look into the next slide, we're going to spend more time there, but this is the replacement schedule. And what I did was I looked at year, model, and the age of the vehicle, and the current mileage that those vehicles have. So my strategy is outlined up here in the top, and each of your pamphlets that you have there have this. I know you might need a magnifying glass to read it, but in year one, so 2023 is year one, I identified to replace any vehicles that are 10 years or older or over 100,000 miles. Because again, from an operational cost standpoint, fuel is your biggest budget. Those vehicles are costing us the most in fuel because they have the worst fuel economy, just simply because of age. The other side of that is the maintenance piece. It's really hard for us to project and budget for maintenance when a transmission is going to go down or an engine is going to blow or it needs a rear end or anything of that nature. But what we can budget for is monthly payments on a vehicle. So the philosophy of this is if we operate a newer vehicle, we're all can agree the newer vehicles cost less money and they get better fuel economy. If we can manage that piece, the money that we save in fuel and maintenance, we can reallocate to the purchase of new vehicles. And that is something that we know. It's not going to come at us blind. It's something that we can budget for. And then act on the maintenance cost for a section of your fleet, for the majority of your fleet, barring the police department, you can actually fix your maintenance costs life to date. So you know whether it needs an oil change, a wiper blade, a blown engine, you could employ the maintenance program to budget that. So you know exactly to the penny what you're going to be spending in maintenance for every vehicle that you operate. So the replacement schedule for us here, I'm going to start in the top left-hand corner. The 136 vehicles, the acquisitions, like I was talking about, I looked at the last 5 years to see how many vehicles were we purchasing a year. It's averaging out about 10 when I'm just purely looking at the year model of the vehicles. So if we just simply divide 10 by that 136, it's going to take us 13.6 years. Let me get on this side here. It's going to take us 13.6 years to replace every vehicle in the fleet one time. So that's what your cycle point is. Based off of that, and I didn't have every individual department's maintenance expenses, so I used industry averages, which I'm going to show you here in a moment. But based off of year and age, we're estimating you're spending about 22 cents a mile per vehicle per month, or I'm sorry, 22 cents a mile per vehicle in maintenance, which is about $172 a vehicle per month. I did get the police department's information, and it's a little bit higher than that, so I'm confident with where I am with these numbers right here. Everything that I've designed this analysis to be is conservative, because the last thing I want to do is come back to you with my tail tucked between my legs saying that we messed up, right? So this is your current situation, and then Enterprise is proposing that upper right-hand side. So you can see there's a reduction of about 6 vehicles in the fleet. The reason of that, if you look at that fleet profile slide, again, I removed the vehicles that were going less than 2,000 miles a year. And there's even some other vehicles in here that from a heavy equipment standpoint, whether that's one of the leaf trucks, big Freightliner with the box and the claw in the back, it's going to be more of a tool that we might filter out of this program just simply because of the application and the strategy behind it. But as a whole, in this analysis, I'm recommending we remove 6 vehicles, so 130 vehicles, moving you from a 13.6 year cycle down to a 3.93, so just shy of a 4-year cycle. So what that means, again, is every vehicle in your fleet at the oldest is going to be replaced every 5 years, but that's an average. Everything is not the same. And we marry up that depreciation strategy to match. The Public Works Department is going 10,000 miles a year, and they're using a specific type of vehicle that doesn't require a lot of aftermarket. A lot of those plain white pickup trucks have been replaced every 2 years, just because financially it makes sense to, with where you buy the vehicles from versus what the resale point is and the operational costs in between. That's kind of the sweet spot. But say for your police vehicles that have $6,500 worth of aftermarket that's installed in those vehicles, we're drilling holes in the roof, which devalues the vehicles. From the vehicle type as a whole, there's not as much of an advantage from a pursuit vehicle as there is from a plain pickup truck that either you or I could go into a dealership and buy. So that's more of a 5-year cycle. So that cycle point of 3.93 is not every vehicle. That's an average of every vehicle that you operate and the individual strategy behind it. With that, operating less than a 5-year-old vehicle or 4-year-old vehicle, we're proposing the maintenance is going to drop significantly down to about $60 a month or so. Really all you're going to need is oil changes, tires, maybe a set of brakes or so on a vehicle, but that's it. We shouldn't have any transmission failures because we're going 9,400 miles a year and we're only going to be keeping it on average 5 years. We're getting out of these vehicles before they're out of manufacturer warranty. So the big ticket items that you're currently paying for potentially with some of your maintenance costs almost go away. So I don't know if Mayor Peoples had mentioned it, but we saw a $70,000 cost reduction in their fleet in year one, just from ripping out those older vehicles from the fleet and implementing brand new vehicles. So
That's the mayor of
Pontotoc.
Yes.
Yeah.
I checked with him.
Most definitely. And then for the fuel, current miles per gallon, just based off of that age, big chunk of them being over 10 years, 10 miles per gallon is what we're estimating just across the city that we're getting right now based off of $3 a gallon. So the yellow line is you in our current strategy. We have 136 vehicles in the fleet. We're replacing about 10 a year on average, and we own all of them today, own all of them outright. We're purchasing them for about $462, and what I did with that is averaged out those vehicle types, took a look at what that average cost was over the last 5 years, and then came to this number. You can definitely refine this analysis with hard data and what you're actually spending to get us there, but for the conversation and the proof of concept of what we're trying to achieve here, again, this is we're really confident with the accuracy of this analysis. Maintenance costs at that 22 cents a mile, it's estimating that we're spending about $281,000 a year, and then fuel based off of that 10 miles per gallon at $3, about $367,000 a year. So your fleet budget, and I'm going to move back to this side now. Fleet budget is showing $1.1 million to operate the city vehicles as a whole, and that's just adding up what are we spending in purchases, what are we spending in maintenance, and what are we spending in fuel. We know right now from a resale standpoint with these vehicles, with the age and the mileage that they have, there's not a whole lot of resale value at the end of term. So it's negatable, and you're going to see here where that plays out with the analysis. So in year 23, like I said, I've identified all of those vehicles that were older than 10 years old or had more than 100,000 miles on them. We're replacing 60 vehicles. So we're going to take that 136 number down to 70, and we're going to remove that additional 6 vehicles out of the fleet from the underutilized standpoint. Now we're going to be leasing all of those vehicles. Lease costs is showing that those payments are going to go up, right? We're releasing way more than we have in the past. So $632,000 is what we're going to be paying in monthly payments or annual payments, or however you want to achieve the financing side. But we're going to have $413,000 worth of equity coming back to us from the sale of those 60 vehicles that we're replacing today. Where those numbers are coming from are down here. So this is the valuation of your current fleet. So year one, we're replacing 60 vehicles, and the reason why that 329 doesn't match up with that 413 is because we reduced the vehicles by 6, right? Or the whole fleet by 6. So that 413 is including those additional 6 vehicles on top of that 329. So we have 413 offsetting the 632. Maintenance cost reduces pretty significantly by about 100 grand because we got everything that was old, outdated, worn out that's causing us that expense out of the fleet in year one. Fuel cost reduces because, again, we're getting rid of the older vehicles with lower fuel economy and replacing them with vehicles with higher fuel economy. So if we just take these numbers and add and subtract all the way across, it's showing at the end of year one, after the resale of these vehicles are complete, that we're going to be spending about $370,000 less than we are currently, but we're going to replace about 6 times as many vehicles. Any questions at that point?
I got questions as he goes along? Okay.
Use me as your source of information.
Keep on rolling.
So year 2, same thing. We're only recommending replacing 4 in year 2. Obviously, we got a big chunk of that down in year 1. Now we're leasing, now we only own 66 vehicles. We're leasing 64. Lease payments go up a little bit. Resale comes back to you from a resale of those 4 vehicles, and now we're getting into newer vehicles that are worth a little bit more money. So you can see how that trends up. Maintenance, so the equity lease column. So at the end of term, the equity from the vehicles that you get, it's not your standard dealer lease. I also want to clarify that very much so. And what I mean by that is there's no scratch penalties or dent penalties. There's no over mileage penalties. So if we go more mileage or anything of that nature, when we turn that vehicle in, instead of Enterprise or a dealer selling that vehicle and you don't have any benefit from it, it's just like you own it outright today. So that vehicle will be financed down to a residual amount. And let's say there was still $10,000 owed on a vehicle when you turned it in, but we sell it for $15,000. That $5,000 in equity is what comes back to you at the end of term. So this equity is taking all of that into consideration for us of what that residual amount is versus what the estimated resale value on those vehicles are. And that's some of those pickup truck leases right there. That's 1 or 2 year lease. So another 22 comes back to offset, maintenance cost reduces again, fuel cost reduces a little bit more again, and in year 2, we're showing still a $13,000 advantage, and we replace 65 vehicles, what we would have replaced 20 on our current strategy with. That keeps rinsing and repeating through until you quit seeing the negative numbers under equity owned. So at this point in time, from this point forwards, you're leasing everything with enterprise. So I have a 5-year phase in is what the analysis is showing. And the reason why I do 10 is because I want to show you right here you have owned equity and enterprise equity, but you need to see the ramifications of what does this look like long term. Is this a sustainable, viable solution for us to move forward? So with that being said, the long and short of this is over a 10-year time frame, we're showing that we can reduce costs by about $660,000, $670,000. And if you added up this last portion right here and averaged it out, it's showing that it's going to end up costing about the cost of 2 additional vehicles if you were to pay cash for them per year. So it's going to end up costing about $70,000 more annually in the long term than what you're doing today. The biggest piece of that is, though, in this analysis, you won't be replacing your 136 vehicles one time. You won't have gotten all the way through that yet, and you will have replaced this fleet almost 2.5 times with this same analysis. So get about 270 vehicles versus, or 260 vehicles versus about 106 or 100 or so what you would be replacing it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, run through that equity leased column again.
Yes,
Here's my questions. What I thought I heard you say is that that's the difference between sales value, your projected sales value.
Yes, ma'am.
Versus the residual lease value.
Yes, ma'am.
And why would there be a number? Are you accruing numbers in those first few years? Or are you anticipating something being turned in from the lease program those first 2 to 3 years?
In this column here, so some of your vehicle leases will be 2 years, some of them will be 5 years.
Okay.
So that's why you're seeing some of this earlier on, because some of these vehicles that we replaced in year 1, at the end of year 2, we will replace those, or we would recommend to replace those.
Okay.
Now, this is all, again, proof of concept to
Sure.
show you financial. The actuality of implementing this is that there might be some other vehicles that are more worn out. The individual department heads will work with me and my team to identify that. And if it makes sense to extend that one out, or if we do replace one, push that down to another division or something of that nature and extend that out a year or so, we definitely have the flexibility of that.
Okay.
Another one of the biggest differences in between this and really any financing mechanism that you've realized in the past is that if you want to pay cash, you can. If you want to finance down to $1 or so, or basically like you would today if you went and got your own financing, you can do that. But the majority of our clients, especially in the government space, use that, what we call an equity lease or an open-ended lease, which gives you all of the exact same benefits of the ownership of a vehicle outright today, but it gives you the financial advantage of not financing an entire portion of a vehicle. Does that make sense?
It does. And one of the things that was potentially most attractive to me about this was having a predictable amount annually that we needed to budget to.
Yes, ma'am.
And there are gaps in here where that number doesn't wiggle too much,
Mhm.
but there are also some like the very last year there.
Yes, ma'am.
A drop. Is that typical?
Yeah, the negative numbers, just so you're all clear when you're looking at this, the negative numbers is the cost. So we're comparing this number in the line to this top
Yeah,
number.
I guess I'm staying in that fleet budget
Yes, ma'am.
column. I thought that at some point it might work out to be
Flat line.
$2 million a year.
Yes, ma'am.
Year over year over year, but there's more variability than I thought there might be over time.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you see that in practice?
We do to some degree. The reason behind that is the strategy, right? So like I discussed, like the police department's strategy doesn't work, or a public works type vehicle strategy wouldn't play true. Now, if we did everything on a 5-year lease or everything on a 4-year lease, we can do that. This is, what I did is I ran kind of all of the numbers behind what do these terms look like with the vehicles and how we would replace these. And this was just the biggest financial advantage between that. That's not written in stone. I mean, that is something that you will have the ability to use your enterprise team to work through the budget every year. So if there's a number that we're trying to hit, 60 vehicles might not be realistic. It might have to be 10 or 5 or 20 or 30 in year 1, and then this plan will continue to morph year over year as the industry changes and your needs change as well.
Well, there are big pluses to a program like this. One would be the predictability.
Yes, ma'am.
Another would be not having that aging fleet, and I do think that plays into employee morale and
Very much so.
image, as you mentioned earlier, and those kinds of things. So I see benefits. I'm going to study the numbers more.
Yes, ma'am, most definitely.
Does this take into account things like painting the city logo on it? I mean, I know you talked about the police and drilling holes and that sort of
Right.
things. Does this take into account those needs for us to?
I did not add that, but I can add that. I did use that for the police department. So I took the $6,500 worth of equipment that they provided for their equipment cost and added that into their vehicles. If we need to do that for yours or for the rest of the vehicles as well, we're looking typically anywhere from about $300 to $500 a vehicle, and that's something that I want to take into consideration because that's an additional cost. If we replace that vehicle every 2 years opposed to every 3 years, then that's going to be, if we're replacing 60 vehicles, that can be a pretty good chunk of money. It's 20 grand. So that's something that we definitely want to take a look in, and as we really start to refine what this year 1, year 2 strategy is going to look like, that's where those hard dollars and cents will come down. The analysis is great for everything that it does. The few things that it tilts in your favor is the resale that I'm talking about and I'm showing here is showing the dollar amount, but it's actually taking every vehicle and showing you the exact same expense. So when you replace, let's say these 60 vehicles, and we're going to replace a good chunk of them with that $866,000 of equity in year 5. When we do that, it's still showing when we replace it, it's the same vehicle cost right now. So it's not factoring in that resale that's going to be coming in to offset that. So in theory, this would be less. There's also going to be an increase of vehicle prices as well. So this is just taking today's snapshot of what vehicles are today and expanding that out over 10 years. So those two things tend to balance itself out with the analysis from what I've seen.
Any other questions on this? If we put them on?
Yeah, perfectly fine. So the other thing, like I said, one of the questions that we had after the last conversation that we had was the police department wanted to see theirs by themselves. The reason why, and I'll show you that I typically do it all together, and we talked about this last time, is that the police department, with the equipment that they have and the vehicle types, and just to go in a little bit about that, only government organizations can order a pursuit level vehicle. So the advantage that you have from, say, buying an F-150 that's not pursuit, and I can go in and buy an F-150 as just a citizen, from a government standpoint, your buy is much better. And so the resale value plays true and helps you ease the depreciation curve. If you get a $10,000 incentive on a police vehicle, it doesn't really give you much of a competitive advantage on the resale market because everyone else that can buy that vehicle is buying it for the same price point. Does that make sense? So I say that to say, one of the philosophical changes that I would present is instead of, we're still going to have individual departments and budgets and things of that nature. But when we're looking at the fleet as a whole, I would charge you to look at it as a collective rather than individual organizations, because the savings that you're going to have on what we consider your white fleet, plain white vehicles and the public works and all of those departments' vehicles, that's going to save you a whole bunch of money. Police department's not a huge savings, and you're going to see that in a moment. It's not a savings at all. But the savings that you have from the white fleet offset the police fleet. That way you can marry those two end goals together to have a mutually beneficial output. So with the police department, they provided me the fleet list and their operational expenses. So I had at least their expenses from this fiscal year over a 5-month time frame was about $65,000. I divided that by 5 and then expanded that by 12 so I could get us kind of a ballpark of what the budget, what we're on track for to spend at the end of this year, coupled with just the miles per gallon that they're getting on average from vehicle type and what that looks like. So 59 vehicles in their fleet, ages 6.8 years and going about 11,000 miles a year. Again, I would highlight, we have just shy of 20 vehicles, 19 vehicles over 10 years old. So those are the ones that tend to, again, cause you the maintenance and the downtime problems that you're having. Replacement schedule is up here again and then reflected here. So that plays out this way. So that 59 vehicles based off of their current acquisitions, and again, just looking at your models, it's going to take about 12 years to replace the police fleet one time. Maintenance costs based off of that math that I told you plays out to about $220 per vehicle per month is what we're spending on that side. But the police department is expected to have higher maintenance to some degree, much more idle time, the application of those vehicles is very different than a meter reader truck or something of that nature as well, with harsh acceleration, cornering, braking, things of that nature. So that's anticipated. Annual miles is 11,000, 14 miles per gallon is what we're operating. And then I'm proposing that we pull that back down, keep the same number of vehicles, if not growth, if there's any need for take-home units and things of that nature. But the proposed cycle is going to be just shy of 4.5 years. And that's based on some of the administrative units are going to have a shorter term. Your patrol units that have cages, lights, push bumper, sirens, and all that stuff, then it's going to be a longer term, closer to 5 years.
What is your projected fleet? 50, 59?
Yes, ma'am, 59. Yes, ma'am. So we have year one, averaging about 5 vehicles a year, roughly. The purchase cost is about $200,000 if we were paying cash for those vehicles outright. Maintenance, fuel, so all-in fleet budget was $500,000. And again, the same story plays true. The end goal and the way that I look at this is, again, it's costing $530,000 over 10 years to move the police department from a 12-year cycle down to a 5-year cycle. And it's going to cost us, with the last half, once we're fully implemented, it's going to cost us about $121,000 more a year for this segment of the fleet than what we're doing today. Again, the biggest thing is that we're not going to be able to replace the whole fleet. It's still going to take us about 2 more years to replace the remaining 9 vehicles or so that we have in the fleet. And then the enterprise proposal, we're showing that you're going to have replaced 118 vehicles within the same time frame. And over a 10-year time frame, if we divided that out, it looks like it'll cost us about a vehicle and a half more, or after we're fully leasing, about the cost of 3 additional vehicles if we were paying cash for those vehicles per year, at about $40,000 a piece is the average cost of a vehicle in the police department right now. So obviously operational factors included with that, less downtime. These are the officers' offices, if you will. And then with the recruitment, the retention, some of that piece that's challenging, especially if there was any opportunity from a take-home vehicle standpoint to increase the number of officers that were in a pool vehicle standpoint. I've seen big impacts, especially like for Pontotoc, smaller city, and some of the other ones as well that we've implemented, New Albany and so on and so forth.
And right now, Hattiesburg, Oxford, they only use it for their police department, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that's still the case.
Mm-hmm.
And Chief, you talked to the chief of police in Oxford,
I have.
and would you give us what you took away from your conversation with him?
Yes, ma'am. Chief up there advised that, again, he was a little hesitant on the program, he was kind of scared because the fleet is so essential to our operations. But he said he couldn't be more proud of that. They started out with administrative vehicles, and I think by year 2 went into patrol. Same concerns, how do you take a lot of professional costs, resetting up the computers, things of that nature, to build your vehicle custom to your own department's needs. But Chief up there advised, he strongly recommended the program, and actually hit on some of the same challenges we're going right now. An extremely fast aging fleet, cost structure, maintenance, and he just didn't have a solution until Enterprise came on.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Any other questions about the proof of concept modeling that we've done so far before I kind of walk through just the how this all works to give you a little more color with that?
Can we run through how this all works?
Yes, ma'am. We sure can. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time with that at all.
Just job.
Job through. I've already forwarded this to you, Joel, so if you want to blast this out, you can, but Mayor, you should have this as well. This is just some third-party data that backs up some of the maintenance figures that I had. So another Utilimark's a third-party industry. They did the study over a 3-year time frame with over multiple municipalities to give us kind of a benchmark. A lot of cities and counties don't even record it, or it's recorded in a paper ledger somewhere. So this just gives me some footing to back up some of the analysis. Acquisition-wise, I already said, we can get straight from the same dealers that you get with today. We have existing relationships with them. One of the biggest reasons, especially with the vehicle availability, places like Adams County Sheriff's Department, or really anybody, but they particularly wanted to operate Tahoes. When they implemented the partnership, there wasn't a Tahoe in the state of Mississippi that they could acquire. Based off of the laws that they were bound by, they couldn't go outside of the state to go get them. When they implemented the enterprise partnership, they're tapping into a nationwide infrastructure of dealers that we do business with day in and day out. We were able to locate Tahoe's, Tennessee, pull them down, get them to them, and meet both their operational and their financial goals that they had in place. Best practice, again, is, and for what Enterprise is charged with, is getting you the cheapest vehicle that matches that application. But the way that we do that, and this just kind of gives you a snippet, if you came to me and said, Will, we need some pickup trucks, what do you recommend? You might have one option, maybe two options on the state bid list to go implement, but my job and the relationships with the knowledge that we have is I would benchmark, say, Ford versus Chevy versus Nissan versus Toyota, and give you options across all the spectrum and say, based off of all of the factors from what we're buying it for, maintaining it, fueling it, what the resale value is going to be at the end of term, even what you're going to pay Enterprise is all factored into this analysis. It shows us down to a cents per mile, what is it going to cost us to operate these vehicles. We genuinely can provide this information with the market that we're in right now and how difficult it is. It's been a lot more challenging to benchmark them side by side because they're implementing their strategies at different points in time in the year. So to give you all of that in one bundled time right now isn't realistic. But so what we're doing is we're taking last year's model, adding a 10% increase on price to it to get you in the ballpark worst case scenario so you can make those decisions surrounding the fleet. And then as more information comes to light, we can refine that and update that. We'll get back there, but it's still going to take us another 3 or 4 years. It's kind of hard to imagine how quickly the bottom fell out of the vehicle market and how that's going to trend back up. But even with some of the legislation in place that was announced this week, some initiatives, 67% of vehicles by 2032 are wanting to be electric. So that's a huge change, period. It takes time to develop infrastructure and all of that comes along with it. But the good news is we are already, with our fleet of 2 million vehicles, we're having to be pretty close to that conversation as well. And we buy more vehicles from the manufacturers than anyone else in the world. So the relationships that we have established with them, the communication that we have with them to understand what's going on and how the market's changing, and it's literally changing weekly at this point. That bodes very well for you from instead of having to dedicate someone internal resources and the time to understand that, you have one of the industry leaders right here in your back pocket to tap directly into and use for any of that information that you need. And it's not a set it and forget it standpoint either. So when COVID hit, we had many people, many of our clients that were in terms, say 4 or 5 year terms, and they might have been a year or two in. We called them and said, hey, if you sell this vehicle right now, even though vehicle prices have gone up, you're going to make money hand over fist versus what we had traditionally done because the industry changed, the market changed. And so that's something that you will have bringing to you or getting brought to you, as well as that information on what makes sense to do and what changes do we need to make year over year. Funding strategy, again, we don't care how you fund the vehicles. Enterprise does have to be the funding source, so to speak, to make it all work, because to buy vehicles or to sell vehicles, to notify you of recalls, to help manage maintenance and pull on manufacturers to help minimize downtime, our vehicle matters in that realm. And it really, the only difference for you is that you don't have a title in a desk drawer somewhere. They're all stored in the name of the city, but for Enterprise in care of the city's name. And then on the resale process, it expedites the resale, the turnaround time from that equity and coming back to the city. All of that, just from an operational standpoint, makes so much more sense. So pay cash, traditional finance for, like I said, the municipal equity open-ended lease is what 99.9% of my government clients employ. There is a case though, and with this program, it doesn't have to be all one bucket. So we have a master lease agreement. It's not a contract by any means. There's not appropriation language in there as well, but I say that to say some, like Oxford, didn't do their patrol units in year one because they were kind of worried a little bit about the insurance piece, it being self-insured. What happens? Now we own this vehicle, so if we wreck it, then we just have to go buy another vehicle. We don't have to worry about paying this one off. And then, so, but they didn't realize that they could employ this lease for, say, their administrative units, and then this side for any patrol units that they wanted to. And there's every kind of iteration in between those that we can play as well. So if we are worried about depreciation, we can ensure that you're in an equitable position in day one, if you'd like to, when you take possession of that vehicle for the pursuit side, and marry up some strategies with what your concerns are with that.
Each vehicle is leased separately, is that so?
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't understand that correctly.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so that master lease agreement is just overarching language over every individual lease that you have. Maintenance and fuel. Maintenance is huge. Obviously, that's one of the biggest expenses operationally. A lot of my cities and counties already have built infrastructure around the way that they've managed the fleet today. One thing that I do see quite often with maintenance is if you are having it in-house, there's a big backlog a lot of the time for heavier equipment, fire trucks, school buses, backhoes, things of that nature that require just more time commitment. And as we start to move from holding it 10, 12 years on a vehicle standpoint, and now we're getting rid of these vehicles sooner, these vehicles are turning into computers, so there's technology investments that would have to be made in the shop, outsourcing some of the light to the medium duty fleet to enterprise, plugging into our negotiated pricing for parts and labor, and leveraging our 2 million vehicles to drive those expenses down along with that expertise makes a lot of sense. And not only are you offloading an operational burden of yourself, but you're putting money back into the local community with local businesses, supporting those businesses, and that tax revenue coming back to you as well. So huge piece with that. The biggest thing, like Pontotoc again, Mayor Peoples over there, they had leased a truck from us, and it's going to happen with as many vehicles as you operate, where you're going to have something happen that shouldn't happen early on. I think there was a sensor that went bad in one of their trucks 300 miles in. They took it to the dealership in Tupelo. Tupelo said, hey, it's going to be March. This happened not this past November, but the November before. Said it's going to be March before that vehicle, we get the part back. It's back ordered. They called us. Again, with our relationship with the manufacturers, we were able to locate that part somewhere else in the country, get it overnighted to them, have the vehicle back on the road the next week. So there's no huge savings with that, right? But the downtime piece and the ramifications of having a vehicle down for that long were circumvented by leveraging that. Again, police department vehicles and the rest of the white fleet from a driver experience standpoint are very much the same. But it's a pass-through expense. Enterprise still pays the vendor. We audit and make sure that the right maintenance is being done at the right time for the right cost, that you're not being upsold for anything unnecessary. Because when they call in, they see our guys, and they don't even call, it's an automated system where we have the vehicle's manufacturer recommended what needs to be done when, service schedule, and then if they're telling us that something needs to be done, and let's say you took a vehicle to Pet Boys and got the oil changed this time, but now you're at Tire Engineers, those systems aren't talking to each other, but ours has life-to-date history of everything that's ever been done. So even something as small as, to give you a real-life example, I had a client that they had replaced an alternator 2 or 3 times in the same vehicle, and that alternator, the original one, had a 5-year warranty on it, but no one knew it had a 5-year warranty, so they just kept buying a new alternator on it. Even something small as that helps minimize some of the unnecessary spend that you have. And then you can fix that maintenance cost. Like I said, that's been huge. Santa Rosa County, Florida just came on board yesterday with us. They're employing that as well. From your point, budgeting, understanding exactly what you're going to be spending covers everything from a wiper blade to a blown engine, unless it's pure neglect. But you'll have the visibility and the checks and balances in place to understand when do you have a driver that's compromising that, and then you'll be able to rectify that or coach that driver up to the best of your ability. Then with the enterprise team, just as a safe ball, if we see anything like that, you're going to be meeting with, or my ask of you as the Board of Aldermen is going to be to participate with us 1 to 2 meetings a year to where we can review this fleet plan and make any recommendations to change anything if we see anything with that. And then 2, give you a benchmark performance report card, if you will, to see is the depreciation on these vehicles lining up the way that it should be? Are the mileage patterns that we originally set up trending in the direction that they should be trending? And we'll make those recommendations to rectify those or any changes from that. Any questions about this piece of it? Pretty simple. Perfect. Fuel and telematics, again, not going to spend a whole bunch, but telematics has just become more popular in the fleet world today, more so as an asset management liability reduction standpoint, knowing where your vehicles are. Geotab is the provider that we use. They are a Sourcewell member, and there is a Sourcewell contract for that if that's something that you did want to employ. It does accident recreation, which is, we've seen those well for us. Had an employee of ours get in an accident on private property that couldn't, obviously the police report couldn't point fingers at who was at fault. We pulled that data and were able to recreate that accident, prove fault, and so their insurance provider had to fix those vehicles instead of us footing the bill for ours and they're footing the bill for theirs. So little things like that, and then operating 136 vehicles, where are these vehicles, where are they traveling? Things of that nature can help just from an oversight standpoint. The fuel piece, I know this is an avenue because Pontotoc, I think, is exploring it as well. Fuel Man is the big fuel card provider in the state of Mississippi. You would have to do a separate RFP for the WEX fuel cards, but the biggest piece for us is the data. So collecting, what are you spending, how many gallons of vehicles are going in these vehicles, what types of fuel is going in these vehicles. Maybe there's a coaching opportunity to go from premium to unleaded, or those checks and balances might be in place already. Gives all of that data, funnels it into a central point. You have an enterprise dashboard that every single one of your department heads is going to have access to for their specific fleet. So they'll see who needs an oil change, who needs, or who's maybe a 12-gallon tank might have gotten 14 gallons of fuel in it. How did that happen? Was there an extra fuel can that we need to have, or what do we need to do to accommodate for that and plan for that? All of that data is funneled into us. You have access to it, but you're not necessarily charged with understanding it, because again, that's going to be brought to you in the strategic meetings year over year and help you understand where those areas of opportunity lie. Resale, again, that's the secret sauce. We invest more in our company in this piece of our business than anywhere else. So if you can imagine today selling roughly 10 vehicles a year, if you lose $100 on the vehicle cost, it's probably not the biggest hit to you, right? That's $1,000 overall for the whole thing. We buy and sell about 1 million vehicles a year. So in 2020, we sold 1.1, but losing $100 a vehicle on us is $100 million to our bottom line. So that's huge. So these guys, the team that sells the enterprise rental fleet vehicles is the same team that sells the enterprise fleet management clients vehicles as well. They don't know the difference. They have a sheet of paper with year, make, model, and mileage, just like the information I asked from you guys. And they have local dealer relationships with every single dealer, probably that you already deal with, to sell those vehicles on the used car side to backfill their used inventory. They're graded on how quickly they sell vehicles and for how much. That's literally how they're promoted, how they get paid. It dictates their pay scale and all of that. So there's checks and balances in place to ensure that your vehicles are being sold for as much as possible and as efficiently as possible. But it negates us having to go through channels like govdeals.com, because you're selling to a buyer that's looking for a deal in that side. And if we can negate trying to sell at auction, where when you go put a vehicle up for auction, you have to pay the auction fee to sell it there, the buyer has to pay the auction fee to buy it there, that's cutting into money that could be coming back into your pocket. So we sell directly to wholesale on about 85% of the vehicles that we sell, and that's in an effort to maximize that equity return to you. After that, again, dedicated account team. It's not to holler at me and let me know when you need another vehicle. This is very much a comprehensive, financially driven fleet program. Because at the end of the day, again, we're charged to help you do the same thing that you're trying to accomplish with spending the taxpayers' dollars as wisely as you can. And marrying it up with a private strategy helps you offload that administrative burden with the peace of mind knowing that the financial impacts are the highest that they can possibly have. And that's it. Did I run through it?
I appreciate the job.
Yeah.
That was good. That was good. Any questions of Will while we have them in front of us? Obviously, a lot to
digest.
chew on and digest, but I really appreciate them taking the time to come over and
Yeah.
give us such a thorough update. So
Anytime.
this is one of the things that is on Facebook, so we can cue it back up and watch it all over again if we want to go back to details.
There you go.
And you'll take questions if we've got some email questions that come up after.
Most definitely. Yes, most definitely.
All right.
I can always come back down. I'm over here all the time, so y'all don't hesitate to let me know.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate your time.
Thank y'all.
All right. And the department heads, I made sure they were all here. I told them all to come in because I wanted them to, if they had questions, that we could get
Most
questions.
definitely. Yeah, I'm the source of information, so use me.
Okay.
Use me while you have me, and even if not today, let me know. I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
All right. With that, let's go to our agenda, which is, we have a set of minutes, and Bert, you have looked at those, and those all look good from your perspective?
Yes, ma'am.
So, can we get consent for the agenda item? Or for that particular agenda item? Okay, consent for that. Mayor's comments, I think, ma'am, we don't have any introduction?
No, ma'am.
No introductions, okay. I think I have one thing the chief is wanting me to do, and I will do that, at the board meeting. We have, no public appearances, and we have public hearings. This is the tax abatement. This is gonna be our second public hearing for the tax abatement. I have not heard from, anyone other than Mark Hasselberry, and he said he was very, much in favor of it, and I believe he even was interviewed by the news. and gave a thumbs up on the concept, so.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Can I comment on that, or ask a question? Let me ask you this now. This, because I saw all Sistrun's comments and Mr. Casper's comments and Craig's stuff. How does this work? It's minimum 500,000 appraised value already. You got it.
An investment of an increase in.
You know, it doesn't have, it has nothing to do with what you value property now. But you have a minimum 500,000.
And a certain percentage of it has to be forward-looking, forward-facing, so the public has to be able to see it. It's not all interior improvements.
Now, what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, this is that the tax incentive weighs all the city taxes. You go, but you take,
It's all, it's anything from 0 to all. It's up to the board, when someone comes and asks, it's up to the board to determine on a case-by-case basis how much they want to participate in waiving taxes.
well, let me ask you this, what about the legality of us doing this business this way, this business another way, this way, just, you know, I mean, does that give us a situation where we pick and choose the winners? It's kind of like the TIF thing, you know, I was 12. We pick one, gets a TIF, the other one doesn't get TIF, we're not big enough to get a TIF here. We got all down Highway 12, we got TIFs every other place, and then nobody's ever challenged us on that. But if they did, what's the legality? Let's say we pick it, who we think is important enough to get TIF.
I think that's a work question, but I think ultimately it's up to us as the board to explain why we're not doing it or why we are doing it, so that when Burke has to defend that position from a legal perspective, we have not just played favorites.
Would it not be in our best interest if we're gonna do this? First of all, with budgetary things like we have going right now, every year, it's not on board, we short on money, we have to look at ways to balance the budget. You know, conceding property taxes, is not necessarily, it goes counter to what we're trying to do in the revenue side of that. But the other side is try to come up with some consistency, try to figure out a formula for how we, I mean, set minimums on investment amount, 500,000, but then let's set time limits on it, and let's set, you know, things like that, where we don't get one guy first 5, another 10, another, you know, we're going to all this, a potpourri of types.
And those would be policy decisions. The ordinance is broadly drawn, and so that you've got a broadly written ordinance. But once that's adopted, we absolutely need to adopt some policies, and if you want to get that specific, you can, but when you get that specific, you also limit yourself in what you can do. So there's a mixed bag there. But
I guess the other thing I'd say, Sister, just is, and I still go back to this, is that in a southeastern conference, host college town, why do we have to incentivize businesses to come into downtown Starkville and either renovate, enlarge, or build a building, bring new business? I guess I just don't see that. If we were podunk somewhere out down in the Boone's part of the state that we're trying to get, or, you know, some inner city, something, it's just like the TIF thing. If we don't have to incentive, why would we do that and then concede tax money?
Well, and once again, just having this in place doesn't mean that you have to ever grant anybody a waiver or an abatement of any amount of taxes. They use it on the coast. Why would you have to incentivize a business on the coast? You do it to try to encourage business development, but they do it on the coast, they do it around Memphis, they do it all across the state. There are multiple municipalities that do it, and it is just an economic development tool. We may never use it. We may never have anybody bring anything to us. We may do 2 a year. It's going to be.
Let me ask you, I'll ask you about specific. People came to us last summer out of Birmingham with one level redevelopment, Regions Bank block on Main Street. That's the same people, that's combination people. And they certainly ask us for tax abatement, no question about it. They're right now, if they're planning this, they're planning this and running numbers based on tax abatement. And What happens, that'd be buildings down there, the second, third floor will be condos. Downtown shops will be small pizza places and stuff, whatever they are, dress shops, whatever. The retail stores and things, but that's gonna be a pretty big capital investment. The biggest piece of revenue on that property is gonna be the ad valorem tax piece of that. It won't be these little shops that can come and go, that'll generate small amounts of sales tax. And so I guess what I'm saying is, if those things are gonna develop organic, and it just takes 2 more years for people to put their numbers together, I mean, I don't see why the city of Starkville should incentivize a development like that.
And you can be a no vote on anything
And
that
could-
comes to the board from now until the end of time. There will be people who see the value in it and people who don't see the value in it. And that's, each of us will have a different approach to what we think is in the best interest of the city, and the majority will ultimately make a decision. Some of us will continue to think that a poor decision was made. Some of us will think a good decision was made, but it's how we govern, and we can't anticipate every example, every situation. That's why you evaluate it on a case-by-case basis, and you make a reasoned argument for why you give the abatement or why you refuse the abatement. If you have a $100 million project that's gonna develop and they've asked for it, it's not gonna generate any sales tax, and that's a critical component for you, you deny it.
Would we do that in this case, if this big amount is 50, 70, $100 million, and then most of it's gonna be
I don't
property
know,
tax?
I have a hard time predicting what people.
Well, I'm just saying, we know that was simple. We know that, or it's where it's in the
We
works.
also don't, we don't know that it's in the works. We know that there's been some discussion, but we don't know that it's happening in 2 years or 12 years or 100 years.
That it's likely coming back at some point in time to us. And I guess what I'm saying is,
To a board, maybe not us.
maybe not us, but then the policies that we set in place as a board now may have will certainly affect.
This is an ordinance that all it says is that the board has the ability, if circumstances are right, to waive taxes.
But this doesn't sunset this board, it's on the books, right?
A board can revoke an ordinance. If a future board wishes to revoke an ordinance, they can do that.
I would just suggest the board we tread carefully on this, because I think that downtown's going to develop. Is this just a downtown area, make sure, what is it?
It's the central business district can be defined by the board.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. And that will be up for consideration at the next board meeting, so.
But not vote, it's just second vote. Oh, it's for
Well,
vote.
it is up for a vote.
Well, I just asked a question.
No, I'm sorry, I thought, yes.
So second vote again would be the vote.
Yes, yes. And the next item is the first public hearing, it will not be up for a vote, so, and that's to amend the sanitation ordinance, and again, that goes back to our, discussion about commercial, or the accounts that don't have actual, utilities, accounts that are doing things that we end up having to service them. And so, this is an opportunity for us to address that and find ways to accomplish.
So I raise support to sanitation, so that's not applicable, that's what we're doing.
This is a separate thing, this is a separate thing, so, but anyway, this is the first public hearing. I have not heard anyone talking about it, I haven't had any calls on it. Mr. Smiley, you had any calls on any changes associated with it? So, okay. All right, then we have the consideration of advertising for fleet management program service. And we will need to advertise for it in order for us to get, input that shows that this may be something we're doing. I would like us to do this, but we obviously just had a major presentation, so chew on it over the weekend and let's take it up maybe on Tuesday and see if it's something that people are ready to move forward with an advertising for. So that works out for everybody. The next item is entering into an agreement with Tippecanoe County for the use of the safe room. I'm hoping that the county will take theirs up on Monday, and we take this up on Tuesday, and we can begin some sort of potential use. I'm looking around for Brandon, some sort of potential use of the safe room for either pickleball or volleyball or something like that. very shortly thereafter. And this is basically saying that we will share the utilities with them. We've annualized, I got Edward to be kind enough to pull the utilities for the safe room for the past year, and it was like a total of about $5,000. And so us splitting utilities with them is a small financial dedication. What I did put in there that was not in the original one that I started with was that if our usage jacks the cost up way up, we will revisit how much that cost would be and then address it at that point in time. And it's got a 60-day termination. So I just think it's an opportunity for us to offer more areas for recreation for our residents. So I'm hoping that that will be something that will pass the county easily and we'll move forward with it. So, okay. All right, increase in sanitation fees. I have chatted with several folks and we have the recommendation, I'm making a recommendation of $3.25, and that's based on the work that Mr. Corbin has done. We've put together the numbers on the costs for the revenue and for the projected expenses that we've got coming up over the years. I asked Ms. Sistro to vet the dollar amounts and what we're looking at. We haven't raised rates, except for the garbage bags, we haven't raised rates in 8 years. So operational rates, other than for that enormous increase in garbage bags that we experienced a couple of years ago, our operational rates haven't raised since 2015. And so it is time for us to do something, because right now our sanitation department is running, let's just call it in the red, for anything other than having sold assets. So the assets we sold have kept us on the black side of the ledger. But we need to move forward with some sort of rate increase. Again, I'm recommending the $3.25, and I'm doing that based on the fact that we haven't done it in so long, and we are always loath to do it, and I understand that hesitation. But I think this will serve us for the next couple of years with capital increases that we've got ahead of us. So that is, that's what's in front of you as it relates to that board meeting.
You want this on consent agenda, or you are just?
No, I'm not, I mean, I would love for it to be on consent agenda.
You don't want the board to discuss it?
Yeah, we're gonna discuss this out. We're gonna discuss it.
And wouldn't we want to discuss that hearing thing for the tax rates too?
No, we're gonna have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna discuss it.
Yeah, and I've not put any of these three, or not asking for any of these three on the main business to go on consent, so they're all, I mean, I think the safe room is probably an easy one, but, that's entirely up to the board. But those are the items that are coming forward.
So this would get our new rate to what, 1950?
Yes, you take the $1.50 that is the landfill fee.
Take that off.
Yeah, take that off.
So it's $21.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. And that landfill fee is escrowed out because it's dedicated to a single purpose.
We get, I looked at the 3 towns, it's 4, or 3 other sides, that's 2 days with garbage.
Yes.
I don't know what they have added to theirs, but that's the total rate. The only one that would be above us is Boston, but we would be highs, we would be low, so. All right.
All right, thank you. All right, there is no board business, so we can move to department business, and that's under the airport. This is that multimodal grant with a local 5% match. Anything, Mr. Rodney, that you want to say about that?
This is just the design of it, so the bill grants, when they come in later, we'll have the design ahead of it, when we begin to get the grant.
And your board is passed off on that, everything is correct. Consent for that? Okay. Under engineering, we've got advertising for the North Side Drive Drainage Improvement Project. Mr. Burnett there has looked at that in a number of ways, and we unfortunately didn't get any more funding to assist us this year, although Representative Taylor did put in for it. So anyway, we'll go with what we've got. Consent for that. We've got $250,000 from the state to support that. So, but we're waiting to see what the cost is gonna end up being through this advertisement. So we'll see what we have to sell. Well, I mean, we have documented out an amount that we expected it to be, but, we don't know for sure at this point in time. Do we have something actually sitting there dedicated to the North Side Drive at this point?
From a funding perspective?
Yeah.
Just the appropriation to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's earmarked anywhere else.
But, you know, that is, we'll see what the advertising, what bids come in as. Consideration of acceptance of the low bid for the street.
Let me ask you this, would it be okay to just have that, I mean,
What are we talking?
the street they have, screens, put on the screens, what all streets would pay. This is, what years and what streets and everything it adds up to. Just for public, because we've been briefed, we have schedules and things like that, but it's a lot of, it's a large expenditure of public money, and I think it would be nice if we could just show what streets or what projects are going to go into a $4.4 billion thing, right? I mean, I think that's appropriate.
No problem.
And we'll be ready for that.
And we'll have to be ready for a vote on that, I mean, like.
So that will not go on consent agenda, we'll have a presentation. Is that right? Okay. Authorize advertising for bids for electrical distribution materials for the 182.
Man, what is this?
It is authorizing for advertising for bids. for-
What materials, I mean, what?
I have no idea exactly.
Electrical distribution.
What the materials.
It's outside of my expertise on what the materials are, but it's electrical, and it's just an effort to save money and time. So instead of telling the contractor, you're gonna purchase this and pay for this and mark it up, we're gonna purchase, pay for it, get ahead of.
This is the bill grant.
That's right,
So,
yes, sir.
okay.
That's right.
Consent.
All right, acceptance of the March financial statements, any issues with those, Joanna, that you're aware of?
No, ma'am.
Sister, anything you're aware of? Consent for that one? Okay. Under the fire department, we, commercial burn permit, anything we need to know about this, chief?
No, ma'am, I think they can, it's a lot, so I think I do the same thing.
Okay, there's the North Star, so it really won't be impacting too many folks up there. Okay, all right, consent for that? All right, thank you. HR, we have hiring, all of these, Mr. Ashford, are replacement individuals?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, so, all of these are hiring, consent for all of them? All right. Okay. Under parks, advertising for bids for the Needmore Community Redevelopment Project, ready to get that one rolling. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Consent for that one? All right, thank you. Under police, we have authorization for declaration of a surplus. Yes. And advertising for the sale. Consent for that one? All right, utilities, we've got Neil Schaefer for the proposed CDBG application for the Henderson Road and the Sand Road area, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
consent for that?
Yeah.
And then approval of NISC as preferred vendor for software solutions. Mr. Kent, would you give us just a quick little brief on that,
Sure,
please?
and there's a lot more information in your packet that if you were interested in it, we have been using a customer information software that also ties directly into our financials as well our meter data. So it's really the utility software that kind of helps run a lot of operations and a lot of our administration. We've been with one particular company for going on probably about 10 years, and our renewal or that contract ends in the spring of next year. We thought it'd be good to kind of go through a RFP process to see what other options were out there. And in your packet, you also see we went through a very extensive due diligence process on evaluation of several different providers, and this was the one that that our entire committee, we have an internal committee that reviewed these. It was unanimous. So our recommendation is to do this. It will not really go into effect until this time next year, maybe even into the summer of next year, depending on when we can start the transition and conversion process.
All right, thank you. All right, other than that, we do have one executive session, and that would be to allow Mr. Huskisson to provide us an update on the legal matters that we've got going on. I think it's probably good for him and good for us as well.
Sure.
So, all right, thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the long weekend. Sweet. Let's do it.